Okay, well, I just want to briefly introduce myself. We're going to be spending a few weeks together discussing leadership. And, it's a class that very much, I believe, lends itself to in person because of the discussion and some of the nuanced reactions and so forth. That's kind of hard to gauge sometimes, certainly in an online environment. Zoom helps a little bit, but again, the course is listed as an online summer course, so there can be no mandatory Zoom requirement, although we will probably schedule a few voluntary Zoom sessions. But I wanted to just start with a couple of things. There's confusion, and there really shouldn't be at this stage of the game. We're grad students and so forth. But there's confusion sometimes about management, managers, leadership, leaders. There's actually a comment that was passed by, and I was virtually stunned, and not too much stuns me at this stage of life, but I was stunned because of the individual it was, who really didn't find value in leadership. And then I looked at the behaviors and then I understood. Of course you would. I mean, if there's a crappy leader, good manager, outstanding CEO, but a horrible leader. I mean, he's got the my cat has better skills. And so it almost goes hand in hand that those that seem to regard leadership the least probably need an understanding the most. And let's get it out on the table. There is an argument among academics, and I don't do the politically or socially favorable. I don't play that game. All right, that's nonsense. If that helps you sleep nights, look, whatever helps you sleep. I mean, I'll leave it that way. So we're with each other for a few weeks, but the notion that anyone can become an effective leader, a responsible and in quotes good, whatever that might mean, a good leader. Well, that's pure nonsense. That's baloney. Not everybody is a leader. Not everybody can be a leader. There is an argument among academics as to whether that implies that leaders are born or made. Now, of course, the politically sensitive way of saying it is, of course, you can be anything you want to be. I'll apologize in advance for my profanity, but that's pure horseshit. All right. So get used to that. And if that's making your eyes roll to the back of your head, then maybe this is not a good course for you, because we are not all good leaders. We are not all capable of being or becoming, in quotes, good leaders, whatever that might mean. And, look, it's like so many other things in life. I watch Steph Curry, in game 4. I mean, 43 points. This guy can hit 3-pointers all day. The skill is just mind boggling. I mean, he's, in my mind, reinvented the sport of basketball. I can't do that. I could spend every waking hour of every day of the rest of my life trying to improve my shooting skills. And I'm never, ever, 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 ever going to be a Steph Curry, nor a LeBron if that happens to be your flavor, or Michael Jordan for that matter. Different people have different skills, different abilities. Now we talk about some of that, and especially if you actually do the readings and look at the PowerPoints and watch some of the videos, you'll get a flavor for this. So I just wanted to start briefly with a little bit of a discussion and go through a very quick PowerPoint. We're going to be spending time with in our studies with an understanding or learning about Epictetus, one of the Stoic philosophers and so forth. But Epictetus wrote, among many other things. And here's the thing about Epictetus. Most often we find what Epictetus said through the writings of others. He did not, codify or write down as if writing a textbook like so many other philosophers throughout history. But Epictetus wrote that evil is uh, by itself a byproduct of a combination of forgetfulness, of laziness or distraction, and it arises when we lose sight of our true aim in life. Hmm, it's interesting. Now we think more often, probably in terms of Plato or perhaps Aristotle or something like this, and the leadership or brand of leadership that they aspired to and or taught. But Aristotle was the younger of the two, and he was Plato's student, actually. And where leadership is concerned, both of these philosophers agreed that the best men, in quotes, because again, given the day and age, the best men should rule. It's as simple as that. And that the purpose of leadership was the betterment of the state to mean the aggregate environment and so forth. And because Socrates also shared this, Socrates believed that the best form of government was neither tyrannical nor democratic, but rather people should be governed by those with the greatest knowledge, abilities, and virtues, and who possessed a deep knowledge of themselves. So at some point, when you read through the syllabus, part of what you're going to see is your final deliverable is a personal leadership philosophy. Well, this will help to kind of explain why. Because as with so many other things, perhaps even all things, uh, we see the world in a certain way. And while our philosophy is not synonymous with our worldview, I somewhat use those terms interchangeably. And the way we see the world is largely the way we deal with people, the way we treat people, the way we see issues, the way we resolve issues. You get the idea. And we are always, sorry, but we're always the same person. I like these inane, ill-informed, uneducated views that, well, I'm one way at work or I'm one person at work, but I'm a totally different person when I'm with family. Baloney. Baloney. You, we are the same people 24/7, 100% of the time of every single day of our lives. We are the same person. We either basically like people or dislike people. We are either basically trusting or distrusting. The glass is half full or the glass is half empty. This is who we are. You've heard the expression, whatever it is, a leopard doesn't change its spots or a tiger doesn't change its stripes, whatever that stuff is. Well, that's it. That's it. So we're going to talk about some things, behaviors and traits and other about, but the core of leadership, the core of our ability to perhaps persuade others, perhaps motivate others toward a particular end or ends. Um, that comes from who we are, our philosophical view of life, of the world. We're going to use a Stoic philosophy as part of this course. Can't do everything, and it's a very short course. So we will be using some recognized leaders, Admiral James Stockdale being one, study a little bit of moral saints and heroes, Epictetus, study some grassroots philosophy from Michael Abrashoff. We will, from DeGeorge, get some basics, skills theory, and so on and so forth. So that there'll be the interjection of all of that, and that's kind of where I'd like you to start. And then I want to share just a brief PowerPoint with you to kind of start things off a little bit. Because, we look at leaders and, I'm sure if you ask 10 people, you get 10 different opinions on what leaders are, what leadership is. Um, I laugh, when I hear things like, Wells Fargo. Well, I have a meeting this afternoon with my leader. You have a meeting this afternoon with your leader. Stuff it, honey. You have a meeting this afternoon with your boss, with your branch manager, with the area vice president, with you. You may have a meeting with lots of different people, but with your leader, pal, you have an issue. Go pet a bunny rabbit or something because you have a real issue. As if calling someone my leader makes them a leader. Stop it already. Just stop it. So, we let me just eliminate those two things. Okay. So we spend a lot of time, typically in the classroom environment, looking at trait theory and others. I'm not going to read through because you'll get to look at the PowerPoints. And a lot of it is geared towards leadership behaviors, leadership styles, things like path, goal, describe relationships. We look at Paul Hersey of Hersey and Blanchard in situational leadership, and we talk about leader-follower readiness and leader-follower relationships and so on and so forth. And we will get to chat about those things. But I had an expert, I believe. I certainly would characterize him as such. Come to one of my leadership classes some time back. It's been several years now. But if you're not familiar with Pastor Joe Carter of Newark, um, very smart guy. I mean, you can look him up and Google it, and you'll find out that he was almost the prodigal child when it comes to faith-based knowledge and discussions and arguments and so forth. If that means little to you, then he was the one that officiated at Whitney Houston's funeral, and then the follow up and so forth. Her daughter, Bobby Brown, but anyway, separate issue. That was all a shame. But here's perspective. Here's a perspective on leadership that was simplified by Pastor Carter, which makes tremendous sense. I invited him, and before the class, he came up and said, Professor, is there any area you want me to avoid? Is there anything? And I knew what he was asking. New Jersey City University, a secular institution, and here he is, an in quotes Christian pastor of a congregation in Newark, New Jersey. But I don't invite people and then, duct tape their mouths. Well, you can speak to the class, but you can't say this. No, and I told him, I said, Pastor, you're an expert. Say what you got to say. And I joke, and it's not exactly true, but one of my favorite stories, untrue as it may be, is that in 5 minutes, Pastor Carter destroyed my previous 3 months worth of lectures and discussions with our leadership class. He just wiped them out, and so I laugh and joke about that. It's not entirely true, but what I will say is he synthesized an awful lot, and he carved out a lot of baloney, and I'm a fan of that. Sometimes that offends people, and you know what? Get over yourself. But he carved out a lot of baloney, and he netted a few things out. And he said, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, but he said, leadership really can be nailed down to kind of 4 things. There are 4 things that are common to every effective, good, whatever that might be, successful leader. And, he just page down a little bit. And he summed it up by drawing on the board CIIL. And what that comes down to is charisma, intelligence, integrity, and something called the lid. So charisma. Did you ever notice how, in my experience, all truly effective leaders are charismatic people? And, I don't know if there's a statement here or not, because I certainly don't want to turn this into a political forum. But my generation had Kennedy, and we had King, and we had Bobby Kennedy. That was, the generation of I was born in the 50s, grew up in the 60s and 70s, and so on and so forth. So we had Bobby Kennedy and Dr. King and so forth. Did you ever notice how JFK, MLK, RFK were very charismatic people? It's not by accident that they turned out to be such huge historical figures and arguably great leaders of their day, each in their own endeavors. Now you can argue and say, "Oh, well, Kennedy was this, and I don't know how anybody." All right, okay, lighten up a little bit. There's a phrase I read somewhere: "Let he who was without sin, cast the first stone." And I'm sure there's a translation into other mythologies and religions as well. But the point being that charisma, they all had great charisma, certainly in my view, and I don't think I'm alone. And charisma, it's kind of those, abstract kind of things that, well, what exactly is charisma? Well, so I put it down as a rare personal quality attributed to leaders who arouse this fervent popular devotion and enthusiasm. If you don't like that, you'll come up with a definition, because look, we're all smart people. Well, that's not true. Most of us are pretty smart people most of the time. So we'll come up with a definition of charisma. But it's one of those things, you know it when you see it. And arguably, Bill Clinton, and look, personally, I don't give a damn about the blue dress. What do I care what he does with his, or what he did with his personal life? But he was charismatic. Barack Obama, there are so many things that I absolutely hated about his policies and so on and so forth. But who on the planet would not want to sit down and have a beer with that guy? Very charismatic guy. Now, a lot of people have very harsh things to say, and okay, look, whatever helps you sleep nights. I'm not trying to persuade anybody. You hate him, you hate him. You like him, you like him. But I think they were all very charismatic. And the thing about charisma, and I wish I could attribute it to the individual who wrote it, um, and I can't. So I'm just hanging it out there. It's not my fault. I wish it were. But charisma, you can't buy it, you can't make it, and you sure as hell can't fake it. I agree with that. Charisma, something that all effective leaders have in common. Integrity, the first I. Integrity. Some people say, well, it's trust, it's honesty, it's certainly all of those things. It's integrity, the honesty and truthfulness or consistency and congruence of one's actions in terms of who people hold themselves out to be. In other words, do the collars and cuffs match? You hold yourself out to be, oh, this great humanitarian, and I could pull the pin on a grenade here, um, because there are so many hypocrites, myself certainly to be included, I'm sure, but so many hypocrites out there. But I'm sure you don't need my help in thinking of a few. But the idea of integrity, somebody that's genuine, somebody that, what they say and what they do, wow, almost stunning. They kind of coalesce. There's a congruence there. Isn't that something? I mean, Dr. King was Dr. King, early in the morning, late at night. Could he swear and utter profanities? Absolutely. Plenty of recordings of him doing exactly that. But so what does that mean? Does that mean everything else is, just torn away because he, used the F word or something? Stop it. John Kennedy, some people believe one of the greatest presidents in history. And some say, well, that's because he was assassinated. Look, I don't know. I have my view. You have your view. But the collars and cuffs, look, he could curse and swear and he could laugh and joke, but he had quick wit, great sense of humor, was very charismatic. Same thing with Bobby Kennedy, same thing with Barack Obama. Who and again, I don't want to get political about this, but I will say one of the things about uh, former President Trump is I don't, and it's just me, everybody's got their view. But I think he was pretty smart. I think he was certainly right about business decisions and economic decisions and so forth. But I didn't find him to be terribly charismatic, I got to tell you. I mean, that's and maybe there's a statement there, because while I disagreed with some of the policies of former President Obama quite vehemently, he's a charismatic guy. But integrity, that's a different story. I'm not sure how we rate integrity, but I believe, love him or hate him, Barack Obama, love him or hate him, Donald Trump, they were the same person early in the morning and late at night. So if you thought they were a no good SOB, well, they were that no good SOB 24/7. So there's a certain integrity in all of that. Now, as far as, the truthfulness and all of that, I'm a firm believer all politicians, in my view, are liars, cheats, and thieves. I don't care what brand, what denomination, et cetera, et cetera. But integrity, that's a hard one to come by in a genuine kind of way. Think about that. Intelligence. Never seen a dumb leader. I've seen plenty of people in the military, in civilian life, on Wall Street, in the pulpit. I've seen plenty of people that try to be leaders, but they're just dumber than a bag of hammers. And it ain't ever going to be so. And so as not to start World War III here, I'm going to leave that to you as well. I'm sure we can all think of people that we think are just not smart people. That's part of what it takes to be an effective, successful leader. Intelligence, the ability to critically think, to reason, to assess. Remember, IQ, intelligence quotient, but then there's also this EQ thing, emotional quotient. And I'm sure you'll find it a little bit surprising, but some scholars argue that the IQ you are born with changes minimally throughout your lifetime. So if you're born and you have a very low IQ, the odds are when you get to be my age, you're going to still be sporting a very low IQ. Emotional quotient, EQ, on the other hand, grows in all kinds of ways, on all kinds of days. And that's for a longer discussion. And then there's this thing called lid. And Pastor Carter was not as abstract about that as he was trying to be all encompassing. Lid. And he explained it, and I'm paraphrasing it, as kind of like the lid on a teapot. You can only keep putting stuff in. You pour some stuff in and you pour more stuff in, you pour it in and so forth. And eventually you can only fill this teapot so much until the tea just runs out, spills out all over the place. So in a sense, this idea of lid illustrates kind of our aggregate knowledge, our aggregate intelligence, our aggregate experiences, all of the above are in a sense, as I put it here, our maximum capacity. And it's kind of the idea that if you walk out of class today and you go out onto the street and somebody outside says to you, hey, I notice you're on your way out of school. You want to learn how to run this backhoe? And you stop and you think, do I want to learn to run a backhoe? The hell is wrong with you? Why would I want to learn to run a backhoe? Mm-mm. A leader would say, absolutely. How's this thing work? Because you never know what you're going to need to know. And more importantly, you don't know what you don't know. And ironically, and David Dunning, world renowned, I'm sure you recognize the name, if not, Google it. But one of David Dunning's comments, and I'm paraphrasing, is the idea that, you know, our shortcomings, in things like leadership and other, but, kind of manifest themselves in so many different ways, but we don't know what we don't know because we don't have the skill that is required that would allow us to know. And so arguably, we can't ever fix that. Some people, I guess, melt it all the way down to, there's no cure for stupid. I think it's a little more involved than that. But the idea that aggregate capacity, maximum capacity, LID represents the maximum capacity, our maximum abilities, our maximum knowledge, our skills, the essence of who we are. That's what LID is. And that's what Pastor Carter says is this last piece. So charisma, integrity, intelligence, and this thing called LID, just like a sponge, absorb everything, learn everything. We can even translate from that the best way to understand our opponent's point of view is to aggregate or aggregate the knowledge that this person has and argue on behalf of that to the very depth of our being. In other words, take the completely antithetical view to ours and fight for that as strongly as we can. And then we will understand the other side of the argument. But anyway, so when we talk about leadership, and I'm going to stop with this here. When we talk about leadership, especially transformational leadership, we're using CIIL in effect to cause change. The change we speak of is not simply change of something trivial, a CRT to a flat screen, but rather this paradigm shift, integrating our LID into our calculus, of humanity. And that's what we're doing with leadership. So leadership is not just a lifestyle choice. Oh, well, this is what I think makes a good leader. Great, go pet a bunny. Doesn't really matter what you think makes a good leader. If that's your view and your perspective and your point of view, you've missed the point. So we will start to do some reading. We will start to understand skills theory and trait theory and transformational and so on and so forth. And you will find that in the contents section on Blackboard. So I'd like you to start to play through those. You will find the syllabus and we'll come together to speak to the syllabus again. But I just wanted to make this introduction and invite you to think deeper than you've thought before, to take all this superficial nonsense, as if these things were, bimodal or something, that, or a binary choice that, well, leadership is this, management is that, as if it were so simple. I invite us to think, to take these 5 weeks, 6 weeks, and really make something out of it. Because leadership is an important part of who we are, whether we are leaders or whether we are followers, and certainly impact and impactful in terms of decision making. So uh, we'll spend some more time shortly, but by way of introduction, go through the syllabus. You do have a couple of analyses that you're going to have to do, and they're based on books, videos, other things. And then your final deliverable is your personal leadership philosophy, but we'll be speaking to that again. So enjoy your day. Welcome to the course. It will be fun. You're not going to be overly tortured, but you will have to think. So if you hate thinking, what can I say? Enjoy your day. We'll chat soon.